chilly, snowy evening. My name is Jessica Krasniewski, and I'm a senior planner with the City of Toronto, and I'm helping lead the Ryding land study. I'm joined by several of our team members, which you've probably spoken to already today. I'll introduce them as I finish the presentation in case you have more questions or comments to share. So this meeting is being hosted by the City of Toronto. It's the first public meeting for the Ryding land study, and since we're still pretty early in the study process, we're really here to introduce the study to everyone, say a bit about what the study will include and how you can stay involved, and of course, receive your input. So before we get started, it's important to honor the land and Indigenous presence on it dating back over thousands of years. I'm a fourth generation settler from Toronto, and I know many of us have come here as settlers, immigrants, or newcomers. I invite you to join me in recognizing the enduring presence and resilience of Indigenous peoples, past and present, and reflecting on our accountability to honoring these relationships. So we acknowledge the land that we are meeting on today is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit. We acknowledge all treaty people, including those of us who came here as settlers, as migrants in this generation or generations past, and those of us who came here involuntarily, particularly those brought to these lands as a result of the transatlantic slave trade and slavery. We pay tribute to those ancestors of African origin and descent. So we're going to begin the presentation portion of this evening with some opening remarks by Councillor Nunziata. I will then take us through a brief slide deck on the Ryding land study, which will probably take about 20 minutes. And then we're going to encourage you to continue the conversation through one-on-one chats with members of our team. If you haven't already done so, we have sticky notes throughout the room, so please do write down your comments. We have a little sticky dots to use, and comment forms. So yeah, please do share your thoughts. But I'll now welcome Councillor Nunziata to share some remarks.
Thank you very much, and it's good to see so many people out on a nasty evening. And thank you for coming. And as it was mentioned, this is the Ryding land study that the staff has been working on for quite a while. And tonight is the first of many future public meetings. And the planning, Ryding land study will establish a planning framework for how the area will grow. And so we're talking about land use, mobility, and community services in this area. So tonight is the opportunity to go around to the boards, and we do have city staff to answer the questions. And we have, I think that everyone was given some of those notes that they can put on the board for your comments. And also we have, everything that you see on the boards tonight is on our website.
It will be.
It will be after this meeting. So just to make it clear, this is a study, okay? There's no development applications that have been applied or submitted into the city. But this is just a study and a framework that in the future, if there is a development application, what the community would like to see in their community, and ensure that we get the proper facilities that we need in this community. With intensification, you need community services and you need recreation, and so that is all part of the whole study. So I want to thank everyone for attending. This is really important to get input. Not only from the landowners, but as well as the community, the people that live in this community. There's a lot of change happening in this community, not just this community, but citywide. And so thank you for attending. And then, if you have a lot of questions, you can ask the staff questions. But we'll go through the presentation, and then you can have one-on-one with staff asking specific questions. And then we'll go from there. And like I said, this is the first of many future public meetings. So this is not the only meeting we're having. There'll be a lot more meetings as the process goes on. And we're not talking about something happening immediately. It would take quite a while. And any development applications that come in until this planning study is complete, then there won't be, you know, any applications coming in until the planning study is complete, correct?
Well, they come in, but they can't be approved.
They can't be processed. So just to let you know that, so it's not that we have tons of applications coming in, we don't. So thank you for coming, and I'll pass it on to staff for the presentation.
Thank you so much, Councillor.
Thank you.
So as I take you through our presentation, I'm going to first provide some information on the study context and process, so essentially the where, why, and what of the study, and take a closer look at the scope that we're going to be looking at. I'll also touch on how this project fits within Ontario's planning framework, and then we'll go over the areas where we in particular are looking for your feedback, and end with next steps. So what area are we talking about, and what are we doing? So the purpose is to set out a renewed vision for the study area and establish a planning framework for how the area will grow over time. So this includes things like what types of uses make sense in the lands and how people can move through the area. So the study area, you can see, is an orange boundary to the left of the slide. It is 3.15 hectares, which is just under 6 football fields in size. That's easier. And it consists of 99 to 142 Ryding Avenue and 90 Ethel Avenue, which are currently occupied by employment buildings, in particular a meat processing facility. So also on this map, you can kind of sense what is in the area. I mean, I'm sure some of you are very familiar, but you can see the Ryding Park and George Bell Arena are just to the west of the lands. Close to the lands to the south are the rail line and rail yard. To the north are the buildings fronting on the south side of St. Clair Avenue West. And then looking east, we have the Metro grocery store and other big box retailers. Also in the area, we have the Kiel St. Clair secondary plan. You can see that's the area to the right in the turquoise. So this is a plan that was prepared to help guide development in that area and was recently approved by the province just in August. And it is centered around the future St. Clair Old Western Road Express Station. So getting to the why. So in 2021, the property owners for the Ryding lands submitted requests to convert their lands from the employment area land use designation in the city's official plan to allow for uses that are not normally permitted in employment areas. So this could include things like residential and daycare facilities. In 2023, City Council adopted a change to the official plan, what we call an official plan amendment, or OPA, in this case number 653, to redesignate the study area from employment areas to mixed use areas, which is what it is right now. And coming with that was a site and area specific policy, or SASP, we like our acronyms, 832. And these are specific policies for just these lands that require the completion, or that include requiring the completion of a local area study, among other things. And so OPA 591, OPA 653, and SASP 832 were then sent to the province for approval. And that approval came earlier this year in January. The province approved the OPA and SAS policies with modifications. So those modifications included changing a requirement for affordable housing to encouraging affordable housing. And this sets the stage for the Ryding land study to begin. If you're interested in kind of the details of those modifications or the details of the policies, we do have printouts available at the room for you to take a look at. So as I mentioned, when the land use designation was changed from employment areas to mixed use areas, it also came with specific policy requirements through SASP 832. So these requirements largely guide what the Ryding land study will be looking at. So of note, these policies say that until our study is completed, there can be no residential or live-work uses permitted. It also encourages the provision of a specific amount of affordable housing, as you can see the numbers there on the slide, when redevelopment occurs. And it also requires the provision of the equivalent of at least 1 times the site area, or 15% of the gross floor area. That basically means 15% of the building for non-residential uses, whichever of those options is less. You can also see the list of studies that are identified in the policies, so things like land use plan and community services and facility strategy, that sort of thing that were also identified to be included. So in terms of how the Ryding lands study will unfold, there are 4 key phases. Although as you can see, there's a lot of work that will be done concurrently as the tasks feed into each other. So we are currently in phase 1, which includes doing background work, a compatibility and mitigation study, starting the economic development study, and why we're here today, our public launch event. We're also starting to touch on phase 2, which involves developing, evaluating, and testing options for the site. Kind of thinking about all the background work we've been doing so far, as well as what we're going to hear tonight. And then that's going to lead to preparation of population and job estimates based on that option, which will feed into, again, more of the background work. In phase 3, that's where we're finalizing all the studies and starting to draft policies based on that work. And then we'll be coming back for more public engagement to get feedback on those policies. And then in phase 4, draft instruments. That's when we are preparing the formal official plan amendment, so that's the instrument, as well as the accompanying staff report. And we're going to Etobicoke, York Community Council, and City Council, and we're targeting that to happen by the end of Q2 2026. And all this will lead to a policy framework to guide development. So diving more into what the study will include, the scope covers a wide range of topics, but we generally organize them under these 4 buckets. So we have land use and built form, mobility and public realm, community services and facilities, and servicing. And I'm going to go into these in a bit more detail in a couple slides. And as I mentioned, at the end of the study, we'll be preparing an official plan amendment, and that is going to replace the current site area specific policy 832, which I mentioned a couple of slides ago. So while the focus of the Ryding land study is the Ryding lands, and that's the area that is shaded at the center, so kind of this color, we do have to look at the larger area to evaluate their potential. So the general boundaries for some of the supporting work you can see here on the screen. So the kind of mid-level area, so this one here in orange, is what we're looking at for mobility and public realm. So these are things like streets and open spaces. And the larger square area there is for community services and facilities. And so this looks at facilities such as libraries, schools, childcare, community rec centers, and community agency space. And it's quite a bit larger because some of these facilities have large catchment areas, so we want to make sure we include those. So getting into a bit more detail on those 4 buckets of work. So starting with land use and built form, this is where we're looking at what types of uses make sense on these lands. So these could include uses like retail, residential, light industrial, cultural uses, etc. And what types of buildings are most appropriate here. In the case of residential uses, we'd also be looking at what types of housing options should be included. And there are 2 key inputs into this work. The compatibility and mitigation study looks at whether there are any compatibility issues between the existing and potential future industrial uses in the area and any future development on the Ryding lands, just because we don't want to create a conflict. And an example of this in this case is, for instance, the rail line and rail lands are quite nearby to the south of the Ryding lands. And so we are looking at impacts like noise, vibration, dust, odors, that sort of thing. And then we also have an economic development study, which is getting underway, and that'll help to understand how to set up non-residential uses on these lands for success. as we want to ensure that there continues to be a mix of uses on the site and to make access to good jobs in the area. In terms of mobility and public realm, this is looking at things like streets, block sizes, pedestrian and cyclist routes, etc., to ensure that we put a network in place that makes it easy to get around for all types of transportation. And as you'll see on the fact information board over there, one example of this is the idea of potentially connecting Ryding Street through the site, which would make it easier to get from Runnymede Park, George Bell Arena, all the way to Keele. We've also noticed on our site walks that there's not sidewalks everywhere, for instance on Ethel Avenue, so something else to think about. And then we'll also look at where it makes sense to locate park space as development would generate a parkland dedication. For community services and facilities, this is about identifying what facilities are currently in place, as well as what potential future needs would be generated by development. And then looking at servicing, we're looking at what servicing is also in place, but also any improvements or upgrades that might be needed to improve capacity. And when I say servicing, what I'm talking about is water, wastewater, and stormwater management facilities. So in terms of where all this fits in the planning system, this is a quick backgrounder for anyone who might not be familiar with how planning works in Ontario. So starting at the top, the province sets out the rules for land use, planning, and development in Ontario, including the tools available to us, the overall policy direction and priorities, as well as high-level standards that must be met. So examples include, for instance, directing higher densities near transit and protecting agricultural areas. For the city, the overarching planning policy document is the official plan, next on the list. And that sets out the overall vision for the city to direct growth. And this deals with elements such as land use, housing, transportation, and so on, all at a relatively high level. And all planning decisions made by the city must conform to the city's official plan. The city also has citywide strategies, which are council-adopted plans to guide a wide range of city activities. These include strategies addressing things like reconciliation and climate change. But we also have guidelines that focus more on development, such as our Growing Up guidelines, which guide how to design multi-unit buildings to better suit the needs of families with children, as well as tall building guidelines, which provide guidelines for designing tall buildings. And then where we are today is the secondary plans and site and area specific policies. So they are part of the official plan, but they establish more detailed development policies for specific areas of the city. So they build on the citywide policies, but dive into more detail to respond to the local context, or to respond to particular development pressures in a certain area. So as I said, this is kind of where we're going to land with the Ryding land study, and also the Keele St. Clair secondary plan I mentioned earlier also falls in this category. And then lastly, we have zoning bylaw, and so that's detailed regulations such as the use of land, the type and height of buildings and structures, and other standards which set conditions for how a piece of land may be used. So this could include things like how far a property needs to be set back from the property line, how much landscaping is needed, that sort of thing. So as you can see from all these previous slides, a number of decisions have already been made leading up to the Ryding land study. And the planning system on the previous slide already provides a lot of direction for how development should occur in the city. So we wanted to be clear about the areas that we're looking for input on, because we wanted to be transparent and make efficient use of your time. So in particular, we're looking for ideas, for instance, where should new streets, lanes, or pedestrian connections be through the site to make it easier to get around the area? How should density be distributed? For instance, does it make sense to have fewer, taller buildings, or should it be more spread out? What types of non-residential uses make sense in this area to maintain access to good jobs and to meet your daily needs? Where could a new park be located on the site? Like, where does that make the most sense? And then, is there anything unique or important about the area that we should know about that we haven't thought about yet. Because this could be considered in the future design of public or private spaces. So for instance, things like local heritage or areas of cultural importance, we definitely want to hear about that. So in terms of next steps, the background studies have already begun or will be getting underway shortly, after which we'll begin drafting policies based on all that work as well as the input that we've heard tonight. We're anticipating our second public meeting to occur in the spring of next year. And that's where we'll present and seek your input on the draft policies as well as the other work that we've been doing. And I'll also note that following this meeting, we're going to be reviewing all the comments we've received, the post-it notes, the comment forms, notes that our team has been taking, and we'll be putting all that together as part of a high-level summary that will be also posted on our project webpage. And then, as the councillor mentioned, we'll also be posting all of the boards and presentations there as well. So let's stay connected. You can see all of our contact information on the slide, so we definitely encourage you to reach out to us and also share this with anyone else you know who might be interested. In particular, I do want to make a pitch for signing up for our email updates. You can find that sign up link on our project webpage. Just scroll down to the Ryding tab and it should be under there. And it just, admin advice is there is a little checkbox that you have to check, and then you'll receive a confirmation email that you have to say yes to. So please do sign up, and we'll use that to send out project updates at major milestones, including we'll let you know when all of the materials on the webpage. So on that note, since that concludes this presentation, I just want to introduce the team that we have here now so you know who to go to for your questions. For questions about development applications or development generally in the area, please speak with Pravat and Nebra. For questions about parks, please speak with David. Please do wave at me. For questions about transportation, we have Matt. For economic development, we have Cheryl. And if you have just more general questions about the Ryding land study or planning in general, you can please speak with myself, Matt, Michael, or Zahara at the back there. So thank you everyone so much, and please feel free to stay for the rest of the open house, which will go until 8:30.
So what I want to say too, so if you have questions at the end that maybe you didn't get an opportunity to ask and put on the board, you can always email staff. So
absolutely.
The presentation following this meeting will be on the website.
We'll be putting it up there.
And if you have any question, that you can contact my office directly. Because we want input from you. So maybe after tonight's open house, you might think of something that you never asked, or you want to comment and add. Be free to do that.
Absolutely, yes. Please do reach out. Thank you, everyone.